Welcome back, everybody, to Emma's Pearls. This is episode 19, Mourn with Those Who Mourn. And I've got with me my wonderful and amazing angel moms. And so we are going to talk about mourning with those who mourn. And we kind of talked about it in a past episode that Joseph and Emma lost 6 of their babies, their children. And then Joseph and Emma's granddaughter, Emma Bell Kennedy, she's the one that I am through. She lost 3 of her children. And so we have her journal. And reading her journal, I wanted to read just an excerpt that she had written in the journal. She wrote in her journal, when my first child was born, he was but a day or 2 old, and I was nursing him. I was alone. The thrill of the touch of those boy lips and little fingers on my breast was new to me, and I lay there thanking God for this gift, and in an instant felt a fear crept over me, and I heard a voice, not a loud voice, saying, "Enjoy him, because he is yours for but a little while." I gathered him to me and wept. Just 2 months did he stay, then he closed his dear blue eyes and died. As he was dying, my father-in-law sat near, and in his view saw my grandmother Emma Hell Smith. She held her arms out as she would take him, and then my father Kennedy looked at him and he was gone. So, a very touching story, and so heartbreaking to hear that my grandmother Emma had lost her child, her first child, so quickly, and just really hits home for me. And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about our children. So I'm going to introduce my daughter Tabitha. My daughter was 11 years old, and she, in 2016, I had a friend over and we were playing games, and Tabitha was doing homeschool stuff, and she was upstairs, and she ran downstairs and wanted a snack. And so I let her grab a snack, and then she did ask if she could play some games with me and my friend, and I told her no, because the school year was ending and she needed to hurry up and get the assignments finished up. And she went back upstairs, and then about half an hour later, my friend's son had been upstairs and he dropped a huge toy down the stairs. And so I quickly jumped up to make sure everything was okay, and I went upstairs looking for Tabitha, and I could smell sunscreen. And so I thought for sure there was a bottle open somewhere, and I was searching for that and calling for Tabitha. And so she never answered, and I opened up her bedroom door, and she had hung herself by her pajamas, and I had to quickly run over and pull her down and try to resuscitate her, try to do CPR while yelling and screaming for help. I had my baby boy with me, and my father-in-law, we were living with my in-laws. My father-in-law came running upstairs and took over, and I don't remember a lot from that moment, but I do remember my sister-in-law calling 911, and so I was escorted into another room where my mom and my dad were. I called my husband. He was out of town at the time, and I told him that Tabitha tried to take her life. And so he had worked really hard he was on a train on his way home from California, and my brother was able to get him a flight home, but the paramedics working on my daughter were just, I couldn't see, I didn't know what was going on. I was just praying with my parents, please bless her to be okay. And so a short time later, they came in and said, okay, we got a heartbeat. And then they took her downstairs and out to where the ambulance was around the corner of the house. And so I I just kind of sat there because they didn't have me come. And my mom was like, she's going to be okay. And I thought for sure she would be okay because that's how it is. They get hurt. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, we'll go to the hospital and bring her home and we'll have some conversations and figure this out. And then a police officer came in and he grabbed me and he just kind of pulled, he's like, come with me. And I was like, okay, is she okay? Is she okay? And he didn't say anything. And he pulled me out to the street and we walked. I'm like, is she okay? And we turned the corner and I could see life light in the park next to where the ambulance was, and it was turned off. The propellers weren't moving. And I was like, why are they not moving? Why are they not going? And then I saw a paramedic leaning on the ambulance in the back. And I thought, this isn't good. And as soon as I saw her kind of step towards me, I knew. And I fell to my knees. I knew she was gone. I had no strength left in me. And they had to pick me up and carry me to the ambulance where they let me sit with her and then take me to the hospital. And while my husband was trying to get home, I called him and let him know. And he, at this point, had gotten on a plane. And the lady sitting next to him didn't know what was going on, but he was full on crying. And then he was like, I'm sorry. And he was trying to stop it. And they said, no, don't stop. They had no idea what he was going through, what was going on, but they let him just sit there and cry. And so that night we came home and just, it was empty. And so it was very, very difficult to experience that and know that this is my life. This is it. And so I want my angel moms to kind of introduce their children. And Heather, do you want to talk to us about Orion?
My oldest son, his name is Orion, and he too was 11, just like Tabitha when he passed away. It's been 11 years now, and it's interesting because even today, while I was cooking dinner, a song came on that is on his memorial video that was played with all of the pictures of his life, and that song forever is tied to that pain. So as soon as I hear the notes start, I'm like, oh no, can I handle this song today? And today I decided to just listen, and I had to eventually put the knife that I was chopping with down and go in my room and just lay on my bed and let a few tears out. But it's much better than it has been in past years when that song has come on. There were many times when I thought I just can't hear it today. So he passed away in 2013, in September 2013, which, of course, none of us ever expect. He was playing, so it was a Sunday morning, and I had a meeting, and he had gone downstairs after getting ready for church. He showered, got his little brother ready, and he had gone downstairs to play on some exercise equipment that he had just made the night before. And I had never actually seen it. But while I was at my meeting, when I came out from my meeting, I was standing on the corner talking to a friend, and my husband came out and yelled for help. And my friend looked at me and she said, "Is that your house?" And I said, "Yeah." And we both just started running. And as I was running, I had the distinct impression, because I had always feared losing a child. The impression was, this is happening to you now. This fear that you've had, this is happening. It's happening. And I just ran, and I ran into the house, and I looked around, and at the time I was pregnant with my sixth child, and I had the 5 others. And I remember starting with the youngest, who was 2, thinking, okay, he's most likely to be the one who's hurt. I was thinking like he could have been in the bathtub and drowned. He could have broken his arm. Like it could have been anything. So I started with the youngest kid and I went up and made sure, and I could see they were each there and they were safe. And so I looked at my husband and I said, Orion, that's my son's name, Orion. I was so stunned because he's the oldest, and I did not expect that there would ever be a time that he wouldn't be safe. And he said yes, and he said downstairs, and I ran down the stairs and I turned the corner and he was just laying there. And he looked peaceful and fine, and I had no idea what had happened. My husband ran down and I said, "What happened?" And he said he was climbing, and I don't know. And so at that point, I still didn't know what happened. But he had been playing with the exercise equipment that he had made, and he had gotten entangled in it and was strangled. And I started doing CPR, and my husband was trying to call 911. And eventually, after I had done some CPR and he started to respond in ways that I thought were positive, but actually weren't, I thought I just need to pick him up and take him outside so that he's there for the ambulance. And I tried to pick him up as a 6-month pregnant lady. And I just had this moment of like, I can't believe this is happening to me. And I almost dropped him and started to whimper, started to cry. And I was trying to gather my courage, and my husband came and grabbed him out of my arms and took him out onto the grass, and I called 911 at that point, and we were both doing CPR, and neighbors were coming to help, and the ambulance came quickly, and what seemed very quick, and they immediately went to work and scooped him up, and the paramedic at that time said, "You have a very, very sick boy." And they left to the hospital, and I followed in another car, and I had this impression come over me: he's not going to make it, but you're going to be okay. And I got to the hospital, and they were still working on him. They called his time of death probably 2 times, but they kept working because they were waiting for life flight. They life flighted him to Primary Children's, where they did everything they could to bring his temperature up and to test for brain activity. But 22 hours after his accident, we took him off of life support, and he became a donor and went to the other side. And he has been very missed and very loved, but very much still a part of our family.
So my son is Colton. He's also my oldest, and he passed away at 13 years old. Colton, for a few weeks before he died, had been doing things like saying things to his siblings and to me about, he would say things like, "I don't want to get old. I just want to have a little bit of fun, and then I want to die." And, you know, he'd say, everyone has to die at some point, so why wait till you're old? And like parents do, I would say, you know, don't say that. That's not funny. I have a nephew that passed away 8 years before that, so it was more real to me already. And the night before he passed, we were at my parents' house. We were headed to the sand dunes down in Kanab. And so we were staying that night with my parents because it was about halfway there. And he was doing that at my parents' house. My mom remembers that. And we drove down there. He rode in my dad's truck with him. Him and my dad are really close, and he wanted to ride with my dad, and so he did. And we got down there and we started unloading the trailer and unpacking. And I remember Colton that day going in his cousin's trailer and eating a whole bunch of snacks. And I remember telling him, like, don't eat all of their snacks, leave some for them. And he was like, "Oh, Mom, Aunt Tracy said it was fine." And just, we had kind of gotten things unloaded, and I was sitting in a chair, a camp chair, crocheting actually, and a blanket that I was making for him. And I got up to go to the bathroom, so I went in the trailer and I was in the bathroom. And prior to this, Colton had come and asked if he could go out on the sand dunes with his cousin that was his age, and so we told him they could, and then his cousin came back and said, I'm not sure where Colton is, I think he's lost. So my husband grabbed my second oldest son, Trevin, and said, come on, let's go find him. And so they went out on the UTV. And the next thing I knew, while I was in the bathroom, Trevin started banging on the door and telling me that Colton was hurt. And Colton's my only child that had broken any bones or anything up to that point. And I wasn't terribly concerned. I was thinking, okay, another broken arm or something. We're going to have to go to the hospital. But Trevin just kept getting more and more upset. And I said, okay, I'm coming. And I went out, and there was a woman that had brought Trevin to camp. And she grabbed me and put me in her UTV and took me down to the ranger station. And I walked up to my husband, and I saw Colton on a flat board, and he wasn't looking good, and there was blood coming out of his ear. And my husband said, you're going to want to go somewhere else, it's pretty bad. And so I walked over just closer to the ranger station, and I was just pacing and kind of jumping up and down and just not sure what I could do. And I kept asking, how far away is Life Flight? And I was told at one point like 12 minutes or something, and I just felt like that's way too long. It's way too long. And there was this really sweet woman there that just, I don't know why she was there to help me, I guess, but she came up to me and she said, is that your son? And I said, yes. And she grabbed my hands and said, do you want to pray? And I said, yes, please. And she held my hands and prayed, and she told me that things were going to be okay, and then she left, and I've never seen her again. But I think about her and just that small, sweet gesture, and how much that meant to me, even though my son didn't live like I wanted him to. At that point, when I found out they were going to Life Flight him, I went back to camp and got some of our stuff, and me and my dad started driving to St. George because that's where he would be life flighted to. And I remember saying to my dad on the way there, I hope he's gonna be okay. And my dad said, me too, sis. And I had a feeling right then that my dad didn't feel like Colton would be okay, because if he did, he would have been reassuring me that he would be okay. And we got about halfway there, and my dad's phone rang, and it was my brother, and he said he didn't make it. And my dad pulled over and he told me that he didn't make it. And I just remember I started slapping my knee and screaming, no, no, no. And my dad said his exact words, sis, you know that's not gonna help. And I said, but Dad, he's my son. And we just sat there for a while until I said, I guess I better get back to my family. And my dad turned around and we started going back. And I found out later that what had happened was my husband and my son went out to find Colton, and they did find him, and he was just fine. And they talked to him, and my husband said, we better get back to camp so Mom doesn't worry. And Colton took off to come back to camp, and he took his four-wheeler over a sand dune. And my husband was in a more utility type UTV, so he went around the sand dune. And when he got around to the other side, my son's four-wheeler was at the bottom of the hill, and my son was laying in the middle, and he was unconscious. And there wasn't cell service, so they had to grab him and take him back to the ranger station. And when they got there, they pulled up, and there was a doctor and a nurse pulling up in the opposite direction. They were married. And they happened to have someone with them that needed oxygen, so they had an extra oxygen tank, and they worked on him, and they got a few breaths out of him, but they didn't get him breathing again. And I still have contact with them, and I'm so grateful for them, for Nancy and her husband, and what they did for Colton that day. And she told me later, Nancy, the nurse, she told me that she felt like Heavenly Father let Colton stay here just long enough for his family to know that everything that could have been done for him was done for him. And that's one of those miracles that I can see now. At the time I couldn't see because my son didn't live, but I'm grateful that they were there. And when I got back to camp with my dad, I was getting out of the truck, and my mom and my husband and my two boys, just younger than Colton, were there. And I stepped out, and my mom told me she was sorry, and my husband hugged me, and one of my little boys said to me, he said, "Mom, Colton's dead. Now what are we going to do?" And I put a hand on each of their shoulders, and it wasn't my words, but what came out of my mouth was, we're going to stay together, and we're going to pray, and Heavenly Father's going to help us. He lost his son too. And I just remember the most distinct feeling of that they had just lost their brother, and they couldn't lose their mom too. Meaning, of course, that I needed to do my best to help them through their grief and do what I could to help them find hope, even though I was grieving too. And yeah, there's been a lot of small miracles along the way that I've seen later, and I wonder if Colton knew that he wouldn't live to be old or not. He did say to my dad on the way down there, I found this out not till his funeral. My dad gave a talk at the funeral and said that on their way down there, Colton was asking my dad, how good do you have to be to make it to heaven? How good is good enough? And my dad said, I think you just have to be trying your best. So I don't know about that, but yeah. That's all.
My son is Josh. He passed away in October 2021. He was 16, and he took his own life. My Josh was also my oldest of four. He had a rough life. He was on the autism spectrum and had difficulties with friends. He was very obsessed with death and dying his whole life. When Minecraft came out, he loved to respawn on Minecraft, and I think he felt like he could respawn. He kind of wanted to try that. So he would try little things here and there, silly things. If he did something wrong, he would go lay in the middle of the road to try to get run over, because he felt bad. But just little things for a long time. And I talked to him one time, and I said, "Buddy, you got to stop doing this, because sometime I'm not going to find you in time." And that's what happened. But I wasn't home. I was gone at a church activity. My husband was home, and at that church activity, I sat with sisters in our ward, and I talked about how hard he was. This little autistic boy. so hard. He was really hard. But he was also very loving and kind and loved everybody. I think he was just the hardest for me. He showed everyone else his good side and then screamed and yelled and pinched and kicked and broke things for me. But I got home that night and it was almost bedtime, and I had access to the basement computer on my phone where he usually would play on his computer until bedtime. We'd say, okay, it's time to get off, get ready for bed, brush your teeth. And so I just logged him off from my phone thinking he'd come upstairs and say, okay, that's what he always would do. Okay, it's time. But he didn't come up. And then my husband came up and I said, do you know where Josh is? He hasn't. I logged his computer off and he hasn't come. And he said no. So he went looking around and then he yelled for me after a couple, it's probably 20 seconds, but it felt like a couple minutes. And I knew something was wrong. So I went down the hall to his room and my husband was laying him on the floor and his eyes were rolling back. So I didn't think anything of it. I honestly, that night, I thought I was really tired as a mom, and I thought in my head, how late are we going to be in the hospital tonight? Like, I want to go to bed. That sounds terrible, but I called 911 right away while he started CPR, and then they arrived pretty quickly, and they worked on him, and they worked on him for a long time. I could hear the machines in his room, and I would plug my ears because I didn't want to hear it, but I did want to hear it because I wanted them to fix it, you know. And I remember at one point telling someone that was there, I'm like, this is taking too long. It shouldn't take this long. Eventually they came out and said that they'd done everything they could do. And it's just so unreal and shocking, and you think it's somebody else. It's not you. It's not going to happen to you or your family, but eventually they let us go in there in his room, and I laid down by him and told him he was cold. So I tried to give him, hold him. I wasn't supposed to touch him where they had been working on him, but I still touched his face and his hair, and it's my story.
My daughter, her name is Lydia. She is my oldest daughter. She passed away when she was 16 years old. This month it'll be 4 years for us, and my fear as well was losing a child. That is my biggest fear. And so right now I am living my biggest nightmare. And trying to keep going every day. But so Lydia died by suicide. She had a pretty rough week. Sorry. I gotta try to do this without crying. Monday was when school had finished up. It was stressful. She was depressed, but she made it. She passed her classes. She could go on to the summer. She was so excited for the summer to hang out with her friends, make memories. She had a bucket list. She wrote everything down of what she wanted to do. Tuesday, a friend of hers passed away in a car wreck. She was devastated. She couldn't believe it. They'd been friends since elementary school. On Wednesday was a young women's activity. I was her young women's leader, one of them. And we were in charge of the activity. But she had some friends that had ghosted her and completely was distraught and left the young women's activity to go find out what was wrong. On Thursday, her dad and I took her to Costco. We walked around Costco and stopped and smelled the flowers. And we took her to Cafe Rio. It's one of our favorite places to go. She'd get 2 steak enchiladas, all rice, no beans. When we were going through the line, the person that was helping us was not very nice. And she was just kind of distraught by the way that he had treated her. Her dad and I sat her down and said, "Don't let this bother you. Just let it go in one ear and out the other." On Friday, she had a really bad headache. She had to go to work. She worked at McDonald's. I was leaving to go to Idaho. It was my niece's graduation party. Mason had already been in Idaho. He had left with my sister. And my husband was staying home because he also had to work. I stayed longer because I didn't want to leave her. And she was laying on the couch up here, actually. She was laying on the couch, and she just had a really bad migraine. And she said, "Mom, can you make me some toast?" I said, "Absolutely." So I ran downstairs and I made her some toast. And I came back upstairs and I got her some water. And I said, "Can I get you medicine? Like, how can I help you?" And she's like, "I just need to rest." And so she said, "Mom, can you make me some more toast?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I went downstairs and I made her 2 more pieces of toast. And as she was getting resting, I remember painting my fingernails and my toenails, and I'm like, normally I would just go, but there were little things that were like, just stay a little bit longer. And I just kept going, and it was time for me to go. I had to go get a graduation present. And so I had left, and before I had left, I was down at the stairs, and I yelled upstairs, and I said, "I love you, Lydia. I will see you when I get back home." And she said, "Okay." And we were working with her doctor. We were trying to figure out how come she was having panic attacks and why she was not doing well. She had anxiety, she had depression, she was having panic attacks. And they wanted to do a heart monitor. And I told her her heart monitor had come, and I said, "When I get back on Sunday, we're going to start watching and using the heart monitor." And she said, "Okay, Mom." And so I had left. I called my husband and told him, Lydia is at home and she has a headache. She's not feeling well. And she's trying to get better before she has to go to work. And he said, "Okay." And I had gone to Idaho, and I got a call from her saying that she wasn't feeling well still, and she was at work and just needed to come home. And so Jared had gone and picked her up from work, and they had a pretty good night. We didn't want to leave her alone. That's the one thing that we didn't know what was going on, but we knew she couldn't be by herself. And so we had Jared's mom come to stay the night because Jared works nights. And so he had gone to work, and my mother-in-law had come and stayed with Lydia, and Lydia had asked for some McDonald's. And my mother-in-law went and picked up her dinner, and they had cleaned a little bit downstairs, had done dishes and stuff, and had gone to bed. She seemed to be doing okay and feeling better. The next day was our last day with her. I tried texting her. It was Memorial Weekend, and I was making flower arrangements for a family that we were going to go visit. And I sent her pictures of flowers and my sister's dog and her cat because she loves animals so much. And she never replied. On my drive to Idaho, I forgot that part. When my drive to Idaho, I had talked to my sister for probably 3 hours. And I had the little voice in my head, like, you need to turn around. You got to turn around. And I told my sister that. I told her I should turn around. I need to go home. And I said, well, I'm only going to be gone for like 1 day and I will be back. And so I kept going, and I shouldn't have. While we were out delivering the flowers, my husband called. Delivering flowers at the cemetery. Let me finish that sentence. We were delivering the flowers to the cemetery, and on our way back home, my husband had called back to my parents' house. We were headed back to my parents' house, and my husband called. And he said, have you heard from Lydia today? And he had just woken up because he worked nights. And so it was about 2 o'clock in the afternoon when he had woke up. And as he was on the phone, he was walking through the house trying to find Lydia. He checked her room, her bedroom first, and her cell phone was on the ledge of the windowsill. And he just is like, something just feels so off, Brooke. And I said, maybe she walked over to quench it to get a drink, you know. So he walked down the stairs, and he's like, she's just not here. He checked out in the garage, and she just wasn't there. And then he went downstairs, and that's where he found Lydia. And she was not breathing. She was not alive. I said, I will let you go. You need to call 911, and you need to get help fast. At this time, I was in the middle of driving. I had my son with me, and my niece and my nephew they were all very little in the car. I couldn't drive. I was trying. I needed to pull over. I needed to pull over so that because I couldn't drive, and it was just horrible. I was trying to hold everything back because I had little ones in the car, and my son was so brave. I asked him to call Grandma. We were all kind of caravanning together. I told him, please call Grandma. So he called Grandma and said, Lydia's no longer with us, and my mom can't drive. And so we all pulled over along the side of the road, and they hurried and got all the kids out of the car, and I just screamed so loud. I couldn't hold it in. I couldn't hold it in. So my mom drove me. She said, it's my turn to take care of my baby girl. And so she drove me home, or to their house. I couldn't walk. I was weak in the knees. And the drive back to Utah was horrible. It was a 4-hour drive. I stopped at so many rest stops along the way to use the restroom. Sometimes we stop one time, maybe. Sometimes we can go all the way and not even stop. But for some reason, and it's probably the trauma, we had to stop so many times, but it took forever to get home. And I remember at one of the rest stops standing in line waiting to use the restroom and just looking around and thinking, these people have no idea what has just happened to me. Like, you would think that, the world stops, everybody should stop, right? But it didn't. And then I'm thinking to myself, what has happened to me? What just has happened to me? I've lost my daughter. Anyways, the drive home was so long, and I cried a lot, and I was so exhausted. Grieving is so exhausting. And when I finally got home, my mom didn't even pull into the driveway, and I ran out of the car, and I ran into the house. And neighbors were all around. And then I ran in, and I saw Jared, and yet again I had to use the restroom again. I don't know what it was, but it must have been some kind of trauma response for me. I don't know. But I remember coming back out of the restroom and just so weak at the knees. And I felt like a piece of me was amputated. That's the only way I could explain it, is the piece of me was amputated, and this can't be real. Like, I can't believe this is happening. I never got to see Lydia. They had already taken her away because it took me so long to get home. The first time I got to see her was the viewing, well, the night before the funeral, where we all could go and get to see her. But that was the first time I got to see her, and I do remember it felt like she just disappeared, and she was no longer there, and to comprehend that was so hard. But that's my story of Lydia.
My son is Elijah. He went by Eli. He was 10 in 2018 when he was diagnosed with rhabdomyosarcoma. It's a rare pediatric cancer, and it had already metastasized when we found it. And so the prognosis was not great. But treatment actually went really well. His cancer responded very well. By about week 30 of treatment, he had no evidence of disease, and we finished treatment. So he started treatment the beginning of November of 2018, finished his frontline treatment beginning of September the following year, and then he started maintenance chemo, which just it's easier than the regular chemo, and is just kind of an extra, maybe this will help keep it away. And he did that for 6 months. And that was 2020, March of 2020, when he finished maintenance and it was end of treatment, had no evidence of disease. And it was so it was looking good, at least, but I had already done all the research and knew that the odds of relapse was really high. So, but I was hoping, I still hoped. And so that was March. In May, he had his port out beginning of May, and like a week or two later, he found a lump on his arm. He'd been sliding down off his bunk bed and his arm had rubbed against the frame, and he came and complained about the pain. And it was swollen, but the swelling was around a lump that even after the swelling went away, the lump did not go away. That it was relapse. And at that point, given the specifics of his case, they said that there were no more curative treatment options. And that most kids at that point die within 2 to 12 months. So we just kind of tried to do as much as we could with him during that time, but that was 2020, and it was hard to travel. It was hard to go do anything. I had one of my sons who was quarantining with another family, and they were very nervous because of a heart condition, about getting the virus. And so he, spent maybe 2 weeks with us, and then he quarantined most of the rest of the time that Eli was alive. And so that was really hard. Eli did live for a year and a half after his cancer returned. We had tried a few different treatments that helped and stretched out the time a bit. And it was November of 2021 that he died. One of my sons started his mission that week, home MTC, and 2 days later, his brother died. I was there. Most of the family was there. he was conscious and alert and awake, and up until almost the end, he just kind of fell asleep, and then a while later, he stopped breathing. And so I called the time of death and called the nurse, the hospice nurse. And I have a great-grandmother who, and this is something, Angeline, that when you were talking about Mary and Joseph and the kids they lost and others, my great-grandmother she lost 4 of her kids before she died of natural causes. She lost 2 babies, twins. She lost a young daughter who I think was about 9. And she lost my grandmother, who was in her 30s and had already had my dad and his siblings. And I have to say, going through, my grandmother, she had died of cancer, and I thought a lot about her during the time that my son was fighting cancer. He fought for 3 years, and I never wanted to know what it was like to have a child die, but we don't always have that choice. That's my story.
Thank you, ladies. And I just wanted to also real fast mention that when Tabitha died, Heather came to the funeral and then introduced herself at an event like maybe a week later. And then we met Amy and then Kristine and then Brooke and Elaine and actually a whole bunch of other angel moms. And so we just kind of gathered together all these amazing women, and some of them were able to make it tonight and some didn't know if they could talk about it. And so I am so grateful that you guys came. I do want to ask, start out with things that people have said or done that were not helpful in that loss and in that time period. And even up to now, what are some things that have been said? I'll begin with one of my favorites. And I couldn't laugh about it then. I can kind of laugh about it now. And I know people mean well. People want to help. And a lot of these words are not helpful. It's actually quite painful. And then we can laugh about it eventually, understanding that people just don't understand. But I had gone to my parents' ward for a Christmas activity just after my daughter had passed away. Actually, it was a year after she passed away. And somebody came up and they're like, "How are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm struggling. I miss my daughter." And she said, "Oh, still?" Yes, still. And it'll be 9 years in about a week. And yes, still.
I think anything when when you open up your heart and share a piece of deep pain, and the comment that comes back is anything that starts with at least you have your other children. At least we have the gospel. Those things can be painful because I've learned that they're trying to comfort, and they are true statements. We are all very grateful that at least we have our other children and at least we have gospel knowledge. But in the moment, it kind of dismisses the actual grief and pain that we feel. It's definitely said, like I said, it's said to comfort. The problem is that it is very dismissive. And I think when you come to understand, like at first it's very shocking and painful, but when you come to understand that, they don't mean to be hurtful, they're just uncomfortable probably and trying to say something that they think would comfort them. And really that's what it is. They're trying to even comfort themselves. And so of course we learn to just agree and take it in stride. But I think on the other hand, anything that we can say that lets that person know, like, I understand your pain, and I'm so sorry, and I'm here for you if you want to talk about it. And I can imagine that that's so painful. I'm so sorry. Anything that invites that person to share more, to feel safe in sharing more, um, is a better comfort than something that sounds kind of like a dismissive, trite statement that at least you have.
I agree with Heather. I have a few written down that I took note of that are dismissive, like you pointed out. And they're in a better place. I don't like that because what is better than with their mother in our arms, with their family, growing up with their siblings? It might be true, but it's not helpful. When people say, "Oh, they're happy and they're well now," like they're better, they're not sick anymore, they're not in pain anymore. That's not helpful. You'll see them again. It might be true, like Heather says, it might be true, but it's not in the moment. It's not a comforting statement. It is a difficult statement because our lives feel so long until we'll see them again. I always hated too, they're serving a mission on the other side. They're doing better things than they could do here. That's not helpful to me. Another thing that was hard for me was people would point out that suicide is no longer believed, that, they're going straight to hell. They'll be in damnation for eternity because they took their own life. I don't need someone to point that out to me. I can go with what I feel when I feel my child and know that he's still existing somewhere. I don't need someone to tell me something that they don't know, that they don't understand, that they haven't gone through. They've just heard it be said and they thought it sounded good and comforting, but it doesn't need to be repeated. I always hate when people say he's always with you, because he's not always with me. I wish he was. But it's not. He's not. He's doing other things.
This is what my voice sounds like when I'm not crying. I don't think I mentioned that my son died in 2018, so it's been 7 years for me. And a lot of times I can tell the story of how he died, just tell it like it's something that happened to me once, and other times I'm crying like I was today. But I agree with Heather. I was going to say also the at least things. Those, if it starts with at least, just don't say it. It can be awkward, and people don't know what to say, and silence can sometimes be awkward, but the silence is better than saying something that's going to be hurtful. And again, for the first couple of years, those things were really shocking and hurtful to me. And I got to a place where I realized that they don't understand. And, I'm glad they don't understand, because the only way to understand is to be there. And I don't want people to feel this pain. Some things that were not helpful for me specifically were things like, well, at least you don't have a driver, because it's really scary when they start driving. At least you don't have to pay for high school fees, because they're really expensive. Also, things like people just telling me that I'm going to be okay. Just being like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. I'm thinking, how do you know I'm going to be okay? Like, how do you know? Maybe I won't be. Some people aren't okay, Trying to think of others. The same as what's been said about, well, at least you have other kids. At least you have more boys. We adopted our youngest 2 kids, and we had them in our home through foster care before Colton passed away, so he knew them, but the adoption didn't go through till a couple months after. And I had somebody say, like, well, at least you got to adopt 2 kids. And that's not how it works. Oh, one's gone, but you gain 2. Like, you just can't replace a person. Any one person, you can't replace them. That's all I can think of right now.
That was one of the notes I had was at least. It's just a terrible phrase. One of the other thoughts I had, because a lot of us, it's been years since our kids have died. And I know before I lost a child, I thought, well, after death, time goes by and you move on. Time does not heal all wounds. And this is where my faith kicks in, that Jesus does. But even then, he's still working on my wounds. I still feel my son's loss. He's still dead. And even though I've definitely had times after he died that I could feel that he was near, that became very infrequent, and I almost never feel him around. He's too busy doing whatever he's doing. But even knowing that doesn't take away the fact that he's still dead, and I still feel that death like it was yesterday. And I don't know when I'll get to see him again. I think that's the other thing, is there's this big gaping future where there's this giant hole in the future that I don't know when that time will be over, that I will finally see my son again. And so, that was, and I think that's something that when you don't have that experience, you don't realize that losing a child is not like losing a grandparent. I've lost all of my grandparents now, and it's just not the same. And so I know that, people mean well. And so I, let their comments slide if it doesn't jive with me. Oh, there was one, I didn't know this person. And she said, well, death is easy. It's just like walking into the next room. And all I could think while she was telling me this was, you didn't watch your kid die. You didn't experience that. You don't know how hard it was. And I think she was trying to, be consoling, and it was kind of the opposite.
Well, I wrote down a couple of things for this. One of them is, I know how you feel. If you've never lost a child, you don't know how it feels. And like Elaine said, losing a grandparent is different. Losing a dog, that's different. Your child, it's big. So unless if you've lost a child, you really don't know how it feels. One thing I do know is that I can make a room awkward real quick if I bring up how I've lost my child, or that I've lost a child. And usually it's more how I've lost a child. That makes the room awkward real quick. People don't know how to respond to that or how to feel about that.
I think another one for me was, and that was actually not too far after she had passed away. We had neighbors from our old neighborhood, because we were living with my in-laws because we were building our house. And so friends and neighbors from our old neighborhood came, and they put ribbon all over the trees and through the park, everywhere that we could see, and of red. Red was her favorite color. And somebody said, when are you going to move on? You got to take those ribbons down. And I've heard, God has a plan. This is part of his plan. It's okay. She's much happier there. And again, like Kristine said, no, maybe, I don't know, but how could anybody be happier than with their mom? I've had a lot of people read scriptures to me and try to bring in the church aspect of don't be sad. This is the promises we are given. And they are comforting in times, but not in grief. I know how you feel. I lost my dog. I lost my cat. I lost my grandparents. And so, yes, very much. Those ones are very hard to listen to. So I would like to move on and ask you guys, what have been the best things people have done for you, the things that kind of show you what it means to mourn with those that mourn. Like I mentioned that my neighbors and friends. Oh, and I did want to say this too, because I think it's important. Part of the do nots when people lose a child, I've lost many friends, and I wouldn't have thought that if I lost a child, I'd lose friends. And I didn't lose them because they were rude. I think they just didn't know how to be a friend anymore. And I remember going to a grocery store. Actually, it happened like twice. And I would see my friend and they would turn around and walk the other way. And I haven't seen them since. But they don't know how to talk to me. They don't know what to say. And so I haven't talked to them in years. And that is a hard one. And so I was very grateful that after Tabitha did die, a lot of my good friends didn't shy away. They didn't run away. They came and they hung ribbons all over up in our neighborhood. And then they kept checking on me. One of the most, I think, the best example of mourning with those who mourn was a good friend of mine. She was my friend since high school. And she lives in southern Utah. And she drove several hours away after she heard that my daughter passed away. And she just sat with me. I tried to grasp onto reality. There was no reality for me anymore. I was in a weird, shocking place. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to think. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to be in life because you feel so lost. And she sat on the couch and she just sat with me. She let me talk. She let me say what I wanted to say, and she didn't stop me. And then she let me cry. And then she didn't leave until I was okay enough that I was okay for her to leave. And to me, that was a huge example of mourning with those who mourn. It is allowing them to sit in the harsh reality. My husband, on that plane with those women, they let him cry. They didn't stop him. They said, no, you cry. You get it out. Don't shove it down. And then my brother and his brother picked him up from the airport. And he went through the what ifs. What if I would have taken that call? What if I would have done this? What if I did this? What if I wasn't out of town? And they tried to stop him from the what ifs, but he needed to say those what ifs. And so that was another big one. What about you guys?
So one analogy I like to think of is there being like a big hole and someone's sitting in the bottom of that hole just being sad and grieving, and instead of another person trying to lift them out of the hole, they just climb in the hole with them and stay there. Kind of what you were saying, Angeline, that your friend just stayed there with you. It's not something you can fix. And so trying to fix it isn't helpful, but just being there and letting them process how they're feeling, whether that's talking or crying or being silent or yelling or screaming or whatever it is that they need to do, just sitting with them. I think another thing that I appreciated was when people they tried to not burden me with more decisions, because making any sort of decision at all at that time was just felt so overwhelming and impossible to me. I had a really good friend in my neighborhood that one day just texted me and said, I was just mopping my floor and I thought of you, and I don't normally think of you when I mop my floor, so are you okay? I think just simple things like that, a text, I'm thinking of you, people that were just there. They didn't ask what they could do for me because I didn't know. I didn't know what I needed. I couldn't even think enough to tell someone how they could help me. but they were just here. They just came, and my parents just came and stayed at the house and took care of kids. And I had people knock on the door and say, "Can I walk your dog?" I hadn't even thought about that the dog might need to be walked. Colton was his dog, and he's the one that walked the dog. Stopping by and saying, "Can I take your kids to the park right now?" Looking outside and just seeing people out there just doing yard work in my yard. They didn't ask, they just did it. Same, bringing meals, people shoveling snow. Just being there and just doing things. And sometimes it wasn't necessarily the actual thing that they were doing. Yes, it was nice to have the yard work done. It was nice to have the sidewalk shoveled. But we would have been okay if those things didn't get done too. It would have been okay. But the fact that they cared, it showed me that they cared and they were thinking of us. Having board members show up in the street and sing songs to us, and they were so kind and gracious, and they're like, "If you can't come to the door, it's okay. We're just gonna be out here singing." Yeah, those are some things I can think of right now.
So, we also had ribbons that were put up around the neighborhood. One of the things I appreciated was during the year following his death, for all of the holidays, I would show up to just visit his gravesite, and it would be decorated. There would be themed stuff decorated on his grave. There was a woman I didn't know, but she is a local artist, and she did a little painting of him and gave that to me. Our neighbor, he mowed our lawn for 2 years. Sorry. And it wasn't like even a one-time thing. He did it all the summer that Eli was in treatment, and then all the summer that maybe he did it 3 years, because there was the summer that he was dying. We were in and out of town that summer doing clinical trials and stuff. But he just said, "Focus on your family and I will take care of your lawn." And that's what he did. That was probably some of the most time consuming service that we received. We were so grateful, because our lawn never looked better, and it just was wonderful. And I had a friend, and I know, I don't know, Amy, was it you who got taken on a walk? I was taken on walks, but it was because his death was the dying was so protracted over a long period of time. It wasn't, it was during the months leading up to it. I was so stressed, and my friend would just take me on a walk, and we would go walking, and Eli most of the time wanted to come with us, so she and my other friend would take turns pushing him in his wheelchair. And so even after he died, we would go walking, and we still do. And that, I think it's not in the moment when you have just had your crisis and the death has just happened, but it's like all the times after. And that was the other thought, things that were so appreciated is when people long after the death, they still say something or do something that acknowledges the death and it acknowledges the grief. Whether it's a little text, someone showed up on our doorstep with a container of peanut M&Ms just out of the blue, months after he died, or the next year. I don't remember anymore, but they just said that they were just thinking of us and thinking of our son, and they knew that he really loved peanut M&Ms. So
I would say, I'm so touched by everything that everyone said, because I think we've all had some of those same experiences with being served and being loved in our time of need, and how deeply we needed that. We needed it. I almost hate to say anything that anyone did for me because I don't want to make it seem like one thing was greater than the other. But there were so many times when every little drop of love that was shown, even if it was something small, was the love that we needed in that moment to make it. And that went on for a very long time. When you guys have mentioned like years later, it's absolutely the truth that sometimes the world has gone, well, always, I think the world goes on. And as the parent or a close family member of someone who's passed away, we know that we carry that pain, that heavy weight, and that burden and that grief every moment. It's with us always, pushing down on us. And any drop of love that is shown, any acknowledgement years later, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, the opportunity to speak about your child, someone asking, tell me something funny that your child did, or how, even like, how are you? I know that this month is probably hard for you. Any opportunity to acknowledge that our child lived and that we do live with this pain every day, and to be able to talk about it is such a comfort. The knowing hugs. People will say like, how are you? And you can tell when it's a, how are you really? And hey, how are you? It's a greeting. But the hugs that you just might need, that you know that they know, and they're showing you from the depths of their soul that they have not forgotten. I'm a very practical person, so I always appreciated the very practical acts of service, like shoveling my snow, mowing my lawn, providing dinner, because after the trauma of the event and trying to get out of the fog and understand what had just happened and grasp it, we've all experienced that, but it's like your brain no longer works. I didn't know how to cook anymore. I was like, I can put something in the oven on 350, but to follow a recipe, and not just follow the recipe, but to plan the ingredients, to go to the store and buy the ingredients to feed my family a meal, was too overwhelming. And so those obvious physical needs that have to be met, that so many people showed up for. Something that was unique that someone did for me that touched me was a hairdresser, had lost her mom and her dad and her sister. And she said, for as long as you want, I want you to come in once a week and get your hair blown out. And she, like, I think I went for 3 months once a week. And she would wash my hair and put like a hot towel on my face and massage my shoulders and wash my hair. And then she would blow dry it and curl it. And I left feeling relaxed and like I didn't look like I felt, because I felt horrible. And I felt like I, at least for half of the week, looked like I was living and could face the world. And those are very practical things. But I also experience, like some of you have, like that friend or that person that just got down in the hole and sat with me. Like Job in the scriptures, his friends came when they heard, and they sat with him 7 days, and no one spake a word. But they just sat with him in his grief because they knew his grief was heavy. And I think some of us have had the gift of having that angel who sat with us and listened to us, no matter how many times we repeated the same story, no matter how many crazy things we said about what we experienced and how it made us feel, and what our questions were, what our trauma was. And we knew we could say it over and over again, and they would listen, and they wouldn't judge, and they would love us, and they would comfort us, and they would show up when we cried out and needed that help. And that goes on for years. And the last thing I wanted to say is, we only have two times a year that our life, we don't have the baptisms, we don't have the graduations, we don't have the weddings, We don't have the school dances, prom, seminary graduation, all those things that people who have living children get to experience. For our child who passed away, we have their birthday and their angel day, the day that they passed away. And those are 2 days every year that are surrounded by very painful feelings. And usually we plan something to honor our child, because if they were here on their birthday, we would be celebrating them. And they're not here. And when we set something up and invite people, it's so appreciated when they show up, because that's the only moment we have to honor our child, as other people experience so much more. And so with their living children and just showing up, like just showing up is such a beautiful, tender way to show that I will be with you. I will mourn with you. You know, on these days that are hard for you, I will show up. I will be there. I will mourn with you. And it just can't be understated or overstated. It can't be overstated how much that is grieving and mourning with those that mourn. And it's so appreciated.
Hey, I had a couple of things that I wanted to add, and Heather has such beautiful words and a beautiful way of expressing. I think we all just agree and love what you said, along with all the things that you've said. A couple of bits of advice that I was given in the beginning that really helped me was the next morning after Josh passed away, we had a neighbor who had lost a child about 30 years before. She came over and she just said to be aware that as a couple we're going to grieve differently, and everyone grieves differently, and to be patient with each other and be patient with those who grieve. What might look normal to one person, it's not, you know, what you would expect someone to do isn't necessarily what they're going to do, how they're going to behave. Some people grieve in public, and some people wait until they're hidden in their closet to grieve. But that was really important to hear. And then Amy actually shared that her advice was to be patient with yourself. And I feel like it's such a journey to go through this process that I remind myself often to be patient with myself. So that was a couple of things just to add along with what everyone else has said.
Another thing I wanted to mention was I have a neighbor. After we moved to this house that I currently live in, we moved here 2 months after Tabitha passed away, and I quickly became friends with a neighbor. And she'd never met Tabitha, and she has just always been such a great friend. And she made a promise to Tabitha that anytime she saw red, she would come over, because she knew that I needed her. And one time she saw a red balloon just up in the sky, and so she ran over, and it was a time that I was in deep despair. And she was able to sit with me and be with me. And then another time she was gardening and found a red ribbon stuck in the garden in the dirt. And she's like, "Okay, Tabitha, I know your mom needs me." And she ran over. And it was another time that I was really struggling. And I loved that she, even though she didn't know Tabitha, had never met her, she came over, and she has become such a great friend to me. And every single year on Tabitha's Angel Day and on her birthday, she comes in the sidewalk chalk and says happy birthday, or just writes her name and decorates it with an I love you, along with other friends. And she's always remembered. And I think that's an important one, is remembering even years later. It is a deep pain that doesn't go away, and therapists have always told us that there's something about your body and the trauma, and recognizing that time of year, the weather, the smells, outside. It's the just different things and the seasons change that reminds your body and your mind that it's coming and that trauma hits. And for me, it can generally be about a month beforehand or a few weeks. And this time it's started a few days ago, that just harsh, deep sorrow in the morning and the sadness and remembering, like I woke up and just felt like a train had hit me. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to function. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to hide. And as I tried to go about my day, I couldn't stop crying. All day, I wanted to sit and cry. I tried to function. I tried to do things, get things done that needed to be done, and I just couldn't. I just cried. And it took me about an hour to realize her angel day's coming quickly. And our body knows it before we know it. And so it's a hard thing to have to deal with. And twice a year, Angel Day and her birthday. And so I would also like to ask you, ladies, what does it mean? I mean, we kind of talked about it a little bit, and maybe we could add more, but what does it mean to mourn with those who mourn?
I just wanted to say that sometimes grief gets mixed up in people's minds with being not faithful. Like, if we have faith, we won't be sad, we won't grieve. When in actuality, we are here on this earth to experience all sorts of emotions, and deep sadness is one of them. And it's a beautiful gift to, as hard as the pain of this loss is, the beautiful lessons that I think, if our hearts are open, that we can be taught through sharing the love of feeling like I have felt that deep love from someone else. Like I said, my angel friend who came to me every time I needed her and sat with me. Those are some of the most sacred, powerful moments of being taught the way that Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ would want us to be with each other. And those moments are so sacred that I am forever grateful for what I've learned through those times. As scary as it is to talk about some of these hard topics with somebody, it's also an opportunity to grow and to be in an uncomfortable situation, but to learn what it truly means to love one another and to mourn with those that mourn, which we covenant to do at baptism. Jesus Christ himself mourned. I was studying the miracles that he performed, and there were multiple times that he came to the aid of someone that he loved because they were deep in grief. And one of them is when Lazarus was risen from the dead. When he found out that he had died, he went to Mary and Martha, and when he saw their grief, he mourned with them. Twice in the scriptures it says that he groaned in his spirit, and then the shortest scripture in the Bible, it says that he wept. Christ himself felt sorrow, even knowing that he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, even knowing that at least we have the eternities, at least we have the gospel of knowledge, at least we can be an eternal family. He knows all of those things, and he still grieved. He still mourned to see someone he loved hurt. And I'm grateful for his example of how we can be. And as scary and as awkward as it can feel, I feel like we can get better at it by genuinely showing up for someone and just being with them in their sadness, and that it can be a great blessing to both the griever and the person who's comforting the griever, and that Christ is our example, and we can do it. We can become like him and truly have that genuine love and and sorrow in our hearts, the kind that people know that they're not alone, that will show up and be there for them.
I have, just kind of going off of what Heather said, I actually have the quote right here that we probably all heard talking about Lazarus. I keep this on my fridge and I pulled it in here when I knew we would be doing this, but it says, "He cried. He knew Lazarus was dead before he got the news, but still he cried. He knew Lazarus would be alive again in moments, but still he cried. He knew death here is not forever. He knew eternity and the kingdom better than anyone else could. Yet he wept, because this world is full of pain and regret and loss, and depression and devastation. He wept because knowing the end of the story doesn't mean you can't cry at the sad parts." And yeah, of course we're going to mourn and be sad about having a child pass away, especially. And I think one thing is to remember that that's okay. I know that kind of our nature is to want to cheer people up and help them be happy, but just giving us that time and space to be sad and to grieve and be patient and not put a timeline on it. And one of the things that my mom was really good at is just letting me know that I wouldn't be doing this alone. She would tell me all the time, that she knew she couldn't take it away, but she was going to make sure that I wasn't alone in my grief. And I think about that now that I've had a chance to process my grief more, and I'm in a much better place than I was those first, few years. And I think about watching my own kids suffer and be sad, and how painful it is for me to watch my own kids be sad and go through things. And not only was my mom grieving the loss of her grandchild, but she was also watching her daughter be in pain over the loss of her own child. And I think that that's something that I worry about, is having a grandchild pass away someday and having to watch my kid go through what I've had to go through and still go through. Another thing, one of my brothers, I'll never forget, he's been really great, and he called me one time. It was either Colton's birthday or Angel Day, I'm not sure which, and we always go out of town for those times, so we're not around, and people can't, stop by and things like that. But he just called me and said, "I don't know what to say and I don't know what to do. But I do know that saying nothing and doing nothing is not the right thing either. So I'm just letting you know that I'm here." And that's just always meant so much to me too. And it's just one of those things I won't forget about.
For me, one of the big things we've learned, I'm sure for you guys, we've all learned, is how to truly mourn with each other. And as we have learned about other children dying, and we've all jumped in and we send each other an obituary or a news clipping or something where somebody's child has died, and we all try to talk and figure out how we can go and meet this poor mom and family that has just lost a child. And when you've been there, it's kind of sticks with you, and the pain and the sorrow that they go through, and you just want to comfort. My children are a huge part of that as well, when they are crying. And many times kids have come in crying and just saying, "I miss Tabitha." And it is so hard as the mom to know I'm suffering so much, and my poor child has to deal with this too, and figure out how to go on in their lives without their sibling that was their example. Tabitha was the oldest, and she was their example. She was the person they looked up to. And now they have to figure this out at this young age. And I think an important part of mourning with those that mourn, it doesn't mean just losing a child. It's dealing with some hard things in life, a loss. And I know that can get confused between a hard thing, dealing with a hard trial, and grief and loss. There are hard things, but it's not a loss. And I think we've all been through hard things, but a loss is a forever. And it's life-changing event. And so trying to also help those that have dealt with some hard things is also an important part of mourning with those who mourn, and being able to be there and understanding that this is their hard. This is another event that is very difficult. And so I wanted to add that. Did that make sense, guys? Okay. So I've also had a lot of people call me and tell me that somebody they knew, a friend, a neighbor, a cousin, had lost a child, and a lot of times it's by suicide. And they ask me, what do I do? And so I kind of wanted to spend a little time and explain what the best things would be for somebody who has lost a child. And one thing that I've always wanted, and it's hard, how do I say this? Actually, I'm going to let you, Heather, even talk about it. And actually, you guys that have your necklaces, one of the things that I say after somebody loses a child is go, be with them, help them. Just do something. Let them know that you're there, that you love them. A lot of people want to avoid and kind of just, oh, they need time and space. They need to be alone. And some they may. But the majority of us have loved that support and that love, and that somebody is thinking about you and has taken time out of their life to acknowledge what you're going through. And so, like my brother, his good friend, his daughter died, was hit by a car. And I'm like, go right now, go be with him. He's like, oh, but there's probably people there. I'm like, no, go, just go be with him and see what you can, just pick up something and do something. And another big thing for me was I didn't have the opportunity, but my angel moms, Heather and Kristine, I don't know who else, but they all have a fingerprint of their child, a necklace fingerprint. And so every time somebody's child has died, I'm like, go get their fingerprint taken so they can have that. Because I have always wanted that. I did cut some of her hair, so I have a clipping of her hair. And I wish I had more. I wish I had everything. But I would have loved to have a fingerprint. What about you guys?
Yes, the fingerprint necklace, I always, because that's something that has to be done before they are buried, it's like time sensitive. I just feel like it's a piece of them that can't be retaken once they're buried. And it's such a treasure for me. It's my most, I told a friend today that it is my most valuable material item, because he touched it. It's his actual fingerprint. And so whenever I have a friend that asks, like, I just lost someone, or my friend lost someone, or how can I help this person, I suggest the fingerprint necklace. And it's ironic because today I put it on and I went to church, and I realized after church that I lost it. And I sent a message to my family saying, pray that I'll be able to find it. And two of the people on that thread said, oh, shoot, like, we'll pray for you. And then I sent a message to this group of women and said, pray for me that I'll find it. And within seconds, everyone had responded and said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And I just, in my mind, I thought, they understand. They understand how sacred this item is to me, and how stressed and anxious I feel that I've lost it. And because they've been there, and they'll always understand that. And I just had a moment of gratitude that I have a support group who knows and understands and cares. But the other thing I always suggest is, because I'm a practical person, is meals. Like, people have to eat. They have to eat. So, and that goes on for a long time. They have to eat for the rest of their life, but their grief and the fog doesn't end within a month or 3 months or 6 months or a year. It's very real. And so I had a friend who brought me meals like, I don't know, she probably brought me like 8 meals over the course of a year. And it was like she knew that my pain and my struggle was ongoing. And so she made an effort to continue to serve me well after what most people would consider, you're okay now, right? Like you can make your own food. Like, yeah, I mean, I could order pizza and I could put something in the oven, but it was just such a weight to have someone just show up with a healthy meal and say, here, feed your family and don't stress. And again, like anything you can do, sometimes it's easy to look at this situation and just think, who am I? Who am I to make this better for these people? Like, this is such a big, life-changing, horrible thing. I can't possibly do anything that's going to make this situation better. And no, they cannot take it away. But any little, like I said it before, any little drop in that bucket of love may be the drop that was needed for that moment. And all those drops together add up to something really, really needed, and the support that I think Heavenly Father wants us to give each other as we go through mortality and the hardships of mortality. And so don't ever think my offering isn't enough. Just give it. Just give your offering and keep giving your offering, because all those little offerings add up to so much goodness.
When people ask me what they can do for someone that's lost a child, one thing I usually say is, if you can be there for the long haul, that's really important. Don't assume that they're okay after the funeral by any means. Most people agree it gets a lot worse before it gets any better. And I think I was at my lowest about 7 months out. So that tells you how long it can take. And of course, everyone's different. But, just small things. Don't assume they're okay after the funeral, or after a month, or after a year, or after 5 years. And yes, the support that will be needed will get less over time. But people that remember Colton's birthday or his angel day year after year after year, and they just send me a little text, it means so much that they remember that. They have that in their phone, and it tells them that it's Colton's angel day or Colton's birthday, and they just send me a text, and that has meant a lot to me as well.
I have a couple things probably to add. I have had a few people reach out to me to ask, what do I do? Just recently, I had a friend from high school. She had lost, her daughter had lost her best friend, and they had asked that question, and I had mentioned, and I guess they were really close friends. And she's like, how can I help my daughter and also help their family? And I'm like, try to do something in their honor. If there was a place that they loved to go out to eat, maybe go out to eat and order whatever that child loved to eat. Sometimes when I go to Cafe Rio, I'll get the 2 steak enchiladas, all rice with a Sprite in honor of Lydia. So, I do that. Saying their name really means a lot. Hearing their name, or hearing a funny story or a story that somebody remembers having with your child is so important. And then as far as some people would ask me what, I would need. And I just said, when you see me, say hi. Don't turn your head and, cover yourself and go the other direction. Say hi. Another thing was just pray for us. Pray for us and help us through this time.
I think Amy kind of touched on it when she said, just do something. Like when her brother said, I don't know what to do, but I know something is not the right answer, or no, nothing is not the right answer. And so I think anything to know that someone is thinking of your child It's not about me. It's about remembering my child. I don't get to make memories anymore. I have no more new memories. So all I have are my past memories, and I love it when people let me talk about him, remember him, and tell the same stupid stories over and over again. Because I don't have new ones. But and like Brooke said, just the remembering their favorites, favorite color, favorite food, birthday, angel day, just when they would have graduated, when they would have gone on a mission, when they would have gotten home, when they would have gotten married, all of the little things that you don't get to celebrate. If someone remembers that, it just means a lot.
I think it's also important to kind of understand. I've heard a lot of talks and people talk about how much peace they feel after their child died. And like I had a strange peace. You're in deep despair and what do I do? But there's also a weird, like almost, I don't know how to describe it, but a calm, at peace feeling. And all of us had talked about it, but we realized that those were the prayers. And as people pray, and you're blessed with a peace. And I remember after Tabitha's funeral, we drove to her grave spot. And as we were driving in the caravan, the car with her casket in it, looking and seeing people at the grocery store, seeing people running, seeing people playing and out walking their dogs, and wondering, do people not know what just happened? Do not understand that my world has just shattered? And there's a lot of things that we cannot see that other people are going through, but those prayers have definitely helped and lifted me for sure. And then we could feel that as people move on with their lives, a month, 2 months, 3 months, you can feel a gradual weight come down and realize that people are no longer praying because it's been a while. They've moved on, and I understand that. But you can feel the heaviness starting to land as people move on in their lives. And that was a huge, I think, a blessing, but also a help to move forward and to understand that this is going to be heavy and that those prayers really did help me get through. And as Amy was talking about, like the first year, there's a lot of firsts. There's the first time that they'd be going back to school. There's the first time that they would be going and the first time they're not going to be there to go trick-or-treating, the first time that they're not going to open their stocking on Christmas morning or open gifts, or their first birthday and they're not going to be there. There are firsts nearly every single week in some way. And then you get to the second year, at least for me, the second year, I kind of understood the firsts are over. This is the second year. We have to do this again. But the third was way harder because I didn't realize I had to keep doing this. In my mind, in my heart, I thought, okay, then we're done, right? But no, I have to keep doing this. She's not back. It's not over. And here I am, nearly on the 9th year, still trying to figure that out. And so remembering, I love it when people come and talk about Tabitha and want to hear about Tabitha, or come and decorate the sidewalk for me and send me texts. A lot of people have been sending me texts. My brother called me the other day and asked me, how are you doing? I know you're really struggling this time. And those all mean something. I've loved when people, some of her friends that have now graduated high school and have moved on, and some family will go and take pictures by her grave. I love those things because I know they're thinking about my daughter, and I feel that as time goes on, she's almost non-existent. But when I see people putting in the effort and remembering, it makes me feel, okay, she is remembered. People are remembering her, and that is super important to me.
I'll just add something. Just a couple weeks ago, one of the men at church, he was Eli's scout leader. He just was, in passing, he just said, I miss Eli. And so it's just one of those things where It was a very simple thing, but it told us that he hadn't forgotten our son, and he knows that we still miss Eli.
Thank you. I did add on another question if you guys are good with this, but what blessings have you seen come from this huge loss? Even before or after, I was thinking about, and I actually wrote down a lot of the blessings shortly after Tabitha died, the things that I could see, kind of a preparation that she was going to be gone. Because again, I think most moms, it is a huge fear of ours to lose a child. And I remember before she died, like, what would I do without Tabitha? Like, what would I do without her? And that kept popping into my mind. And then my husband was able to switch jobs, and which made it possible for him to be home a lot more. And for a few weeks, we would go out and play at the park, and he would throw the ball, and we got time. We had extra time where we got to spend some one-on-one time with her. And then just before she died, I want to say it was about a month before she died, we went to the Zootopia movie at the Thanksgiving Point Theater, and my husband was leading our family into the theater, and I was taking the back end with all the younger kids, and this old woman, had to have been 80 years old, said, "Wow, you have 6 children. Or how many children do you have?" And I said, "I have 6. And she said, "I had 6 too once. My baby girl died when she was just a few years old." And I just thought, oh, that poor woman. And it was just out of the blue. And to me, it felt like there's something there. And after Tabitha died, I realized this woman, what I hold on to, like, I'm going to be 80 years old and still remembering my 11-year-old daughter. And this is not going to go away easily. But knowing that I'm going to remember her for the rest of my life until I'm 80, 90, hopefully not 100, but that this is something that's just not going to go away. It's a feeling that's going to follow you. I love my daughter. I'm not going to forget my daughter, but I do feel like Heavenly Father gave me that moment with that woman to understand that before she passed away.
For me, one of the biggest blessings that I have gotten is my relationships, mainly with you ladies. You've become some of my closest friends, and I'm very, very grateful for all of you and how much I have needed that. And another thing I would say is my relationship with my other kids. It has changed drastically. Grief changes everything. This type of grief, it's not just missing your child. It goes much, much further than that. And my relationship has been built with my other children partially on helping them grieve the loss of their brother, and also them seeing that mom can be sad and she can also be happy at the same time. When I look at my other children and see them interacting, and I feel joy in those moments, and also sadness that Colton's not here. Also, I would take Colton here on his worst day every day to have him back. So when my kids are having those hard moments and those times that are frustrating to parents, and that reminder to me that they're here, I get to hug them before they go to bed tonight. And I'm grateful for that.
I feel like the blessings before leading up to that, I feel like were sacred to me, that God gave to me in preparation. I could not see them for a long time after. It was hindsight and being able to look back as I processed and sorted out what had even happened and my grief a little more, that I was able to see that God really had done what he could to prepare me, and as much as is possible, which isn't much, but he knew me. He knew the little tiny things that would have meaning to me. And if I'm able to open my heart and see them, I can see that he was aware that this was coming into my life, and so many blessings after. And I was actually telling a friend today that, it's been 11 years and I'm just getting to the point where I can say, I've never been able to say I wouldn't change it, because I feel like to say that means that I'm saying that my love for my child isn't enough. Like, if you love your child, of course you're going to say you would keep them. You would never say it's been worth it. You would never say I wouldn't bring him back, because a loving mother will say that. So I've never been able to say those words, because I just feel like I'm denying my love for him. But as the years have gone on, and the raw grief is not as painful. And I've seen so many, the promise of beauty for ashes and joy for grief. I have gotten more used to the idea that I'm so grateful for what he's taught me, for who I am. Not that I was ever a bad person before, but I just didn't know what I know today. And my relationship with my Savior has deepened to the point where I know that he'll be there for me in the hardest of hard times. And I don't think I'll ever face anything as hard as going through losing my child, unless it was losing all of my children. But I've been through some really tough things since then, and I had that knowledge to lean on. I was able to say, I know that because I went through this and God was with me, that I can go through this too, and God will still be with me. And for that knowledge and that trust and deeper relationship that I feel like has been hard earned, I don't feel like I can put a price on that. I'm very grateful for it. I feel very blessed for that. And yeah, I still can't say I wouldn't bring him back if I could, but I want both. I want to have my cake and eat it too. I want my son here, and I want to receive all the blessings that came into my life because he lived and because he died.
I do have a couple things I could share on this as far as blessings. So I know I would pray a lot, asking Heavenly Father, how is Lydia? Where is Lydia? Some of those questions. And the crazy thing is right after my prayers, I would get a text from friends saying, I was really thinking of Lydia today, and I remember this story that I wanted to share with you. And they would share stories with me, and I needed those moments to help get me through that moment, that time. So it was crazy how, for me, it kind of quickly, Heavenly Father wanted to reassure me that Lydia is okay. And, he sent people my way to help me through those times. He sent the angel moms to me to help relate with the feelings, because we understand each other where others don't quite get us. We go through emotions and thoughts in our head that most people would think we're crazy, but it happens. And so I think Heavenly Father definitely puts people in your lives to help you through your hard times. So that has been a big blessing, kind of like what Amy was saying, Another thing I was thinking about was him giving me the strength to do hard things. There were things that I wanted to do in honor of Lydia. We had a suicide walk at the high school, and the high school had called me, and they had asked if I would like to participate in this. At first, my first reaction was, oh my gosh, I can't even talk right now. Like, I'm crying too much. I can't even talk. But in my heart, Heavenly Father said, you can do this, Brooke, and this is important. You need to spread the awareness. And Lydia would be so happy if you did. And so, blessings of strength and doing things that I didn't think I could do that was even possible. And I did it. And when you're grieving, you are so weak, and so your mind is so fogged, and things are really, really hard. And I was able to do really hard things. And I definitely know that Heavenly Father was there. And Jesus Christ holding my hand, carrying me, helping me through doing those hard things. When she was a senior, we wanted to honor her and make sure her name was there with her class. And we did a scholarship, and we raised money for her scholarship. And I was like, first of all, how am I going to even do this? I don't have a ton of money. And then I went to a friend and I said, I've got a crazy idea. I would love to have, do something in honor of Lydia for her senior year. And I mean, this was like a month before graduation. And she's like, this isn't crazy, Brooke. Let's put this together. Let's do this. And she helped me the whole way. And I did some really hard things. I moved like a whole big dirt pile by myself. And I'm like, I was so weak at that time. I'm like, I can't do this, but I did it. And I know that Heavenly Father gave me the strength. And it was a huge blessing to me to be able to honor Lydia in special ways. And I know she's smiling down on me for those things.
Before my son got sick, I know that my personality can be abrasive sometimes, and I recognize that. And so I know that there were some people who I probably had offended, and the blessing that I saw was that all of a sudden I didn't have any enemies. I didn't have anyone who seemed to hate me. Everybody just forgave me for all of my past wrongdoings, and they just showed our family love, and it continues to this day. Like, I felt like I kind of got a fresh start. It was like it really, the blessings were, for me, were relationships. And with my siblings, like, I felt like we already had we got along. But they all just kind of rallied around and just did things for us. And even like the last Angel Day, they ordered a bouquet of roses. Actually, it wasn't roses, of flowers and they had that sent here to show up that day. And I feel like my relationships with my sisters improved. I see them more than I did before we went through cancer and death. And so I really think it was the relationships. And earlier, Angeline, you mentioned prayers. That was something that we felt too. There's like this, the blessings of prayer are real. It was kind of like we were being held up while we did all of the hard things, and we were supported. We just felt supported by the Lord and by all of those prayers. And we were able to continue to move forward and do what we needed to do during Eli's illness. And that continued during his death and his funeral and the months afterwards. And as you also mentioned, it just kind of gradually diminished. And once it's gone, you are able to more easily recognize that it was there to begin with. And so that was something that a blessing that I really appreciated, was just to see how real prayer is and how real the effects are.
For me, I'm grateful for my miracles. I didn't receive a great big miracle in my son being saved, but I keep a journal of all of my little miracles that I've received since his passing, and it's beautiful to me to see God coming through and just sharing his love for me and my family through this loss. And it feels very supportive, even though I had to go through this terrible thing. There are still blessings to be had and miracles to be seen, and those are what carry me through from one miracle to the next. Just keeps me going instead of wanting to just give up.
So one of the things I was thinking about as well is that relationship with God. And at the beginning, I was angry with God. And I mean, it was a love-hate relationship, trying to figure out my life and trying to understand what to do and what's become of my life and the chaos that I felt and hurt. Like, why didn't God give me that miracle? Like Kristine said, I wanted that miracle that she would live. And I did get stories of family members. For some reason, they sent me stories where their child lived. And that didn't help because mine didn't. And so I did also feel God understand where I was at. The times I got mad, the times I yelled at him, and the times that I cried, I felt his understanding and his love. He was not upset that I was upset. He was completely understanding, and it took me a while to finally be understanding of what was going on, to understand God and what I needed to do. And I do know that even when I was upset and hurting and in a lot of pain, I knew I could sit in my closet and I could pray to God, to my Father in heaven, and break down. And I know that I would feel his love, and I know I would feel him. But I was so hurt that I couldn't even do that. But the knowledge that I could was right there. And I think that relationship with Joseph and Emma grew closer because I had more understanding of all that my great-great-grandparents went through, the children that they lost and the hardships that they went through, and all of those early ancestors through the early church, all that they had gone through. A lot of them had lost a lot of children. And then the other thing I thought about was, Heather, I can take this out if you want, but Heather's son just got home from his mission, his 2-year mission, and she sent pictures and video of her seeing her son again after 2 years. And I thought, I know what she's thinking right now. What would it be like when we all get to hold our children again? That would be an amazing experience. And so I asked Heather afterwards, I'm like, what were you thinking? And she thought the same thing, and she can talk about that too. I don't know if you want to explain it, Heather.
I'm not sure what I said before, but I remember I held back from hugging him because I didn't want to, because of Matt and I. I didn't want to be the first to give him a hug, and so I held back from hugging him, thinking that like maybe I could let the girls go and hug him first, and they asked, and I was like, sure, you guys can hug him first, like that will take some of the tension out. And then I saw him, and I watched the video, and it's only seconds that he walks across towards me, but it felt like forever, and me thinking, why is nobody walking out to him? Why is nobody going to meet him halfway? It's taking him forever to get here. And finally, my body started moving forward. I couldn't stop myself. I had to close the distance between us. And, again, it was seconds, but in my mind, it was like a full minute of slowly moving together until I embraced him. And I was overcome with emotion, and I didn't shed tears, but I could feel in my body just this like overcoming, just shaking. And I just was like, Zach. And in my mind, I thought, how much more glorious will the reunion be between me and Orion? Like, this is amazing, but how much more amazing will it be after Orion's been gone 11 years, so he could have served 5.5 missions by now. And by the time I see him again, it could be another 30 or 40 years. How much more amazing will our reunion be after such a hard, long separation, where I earned the most amazing reunion through the separation and through enduring and trusting my Heavenly Father? How much more amazing is my reunion with Orion going to be? It's going to fill me everywhere with joy, and all of the waiting, all of the grief and the sorrow, that distance is going to close, and we're going to be together again. And it will all be, I believe it will all be forgotten. Like a bad pregnancy, once you get that baby in your arms, the pregnancy is forgotten. And I believe that when I get him in my arms, the grief will be forgotten, and the blessing will be eternal. And I actually thought about all of my angel mom friends and just thought, you guys, we have the most amazing reunion waiting for us. Like the most amazing, beautiful, special, hard-earned joy that is going to be waiting for us when we get to hold our babies again.
I love that. So I wanted to read this quote that President Nelson had said, and it's one that I always remember. It's always one that I think about. He said, "Irrespective of age, we mourn for those loved and lost. Mourning is one of the deepest expressions of pure love. It is a natural response in complete accord with divine commandment. Thou shalt live together in love, insomuch that thou shalt weep for the loss of them that die. Moreover, we can't fully appreciate joyful reunions later without tearful separations now. The only way to take sorrow out of death is to take love out of life." And then Joseph Smith said, "A question may be asked, will mothers have their children in eternity? Yes, yes, mothers shall have your children, for they shall have eternal life, for their debt is paid. Children must rise just as they died. We can there hail our lovely infants with the same glory, the same loveliness in the celestial glory." After Tabitha died, we donated some of her organs, and after we donated, a lot of us were put on this newsletter mailer, and they would send out newsletters about stories and others that had lost members of their family that also donated their organs. And this newsletter that they sent, 2018, I have kept because I've loved it so much. And I know people can get very uncomfortable with people crying and the tears. And I've just loved this article. And so we're going to share it with you guys. "There is a sacredness in tears. They are not the mark of weakness, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They are the messengers of overwhelming grief, of deep contrition, and of unspeakable love." By Washington Irving. "Let your tears fall with pride, for they are not a sign of weakness or self-pity, but an authentic expression of sorrow. It takes great courage to feel your feelings, to express your feelings openly and honestly. It takes great strength to tend to your sorrow. Crying is not for the weak of heart. Crying expresses what few words can or ever will. Our work in grief is to feel, to express, to accept, to integrate, to heal. Grief work takes guts, persistence, patience, self-compassion, and courage. Lots and lots of courage. Tears are the sweat of grief work."
It is not the job of the griever to make others comfortable with their expression of grief. It is the job of the griever to grieve. To grieve is to actively feel and express sorrow. If your tears appear to make others uncomfortable, calmly speak your truth. Teach them about your tears. I cry because I grieve. I cry because I am profoundly sad over the loss of my loved one. I cry because life will forever be bittersweet. I cry because there are no words to adequately express how I am feeling. I cry because I'm brave enough to face another day, to endure, to push forward, to live with grief in my heart. I cry to express, to relieve, to release.
Witnessing the tears of friends or family reminds us of our own fragility, powerlessness, inability to fix or lessen the pain and suffering of another. The most compassionate and supportive thing we can do is create space for those tears, to breathe, to sit with the discomfort, and to understand that crying is an expression, a release, a healing, not something to be analyzed, feared, or stopped.
Dr. William Frey, a biochemist and a tear expert, discovered that emotional tears have special health benefits. Reflex tears are 98% water, while emotional tears also contain stress hormones, which get excreted from the body through crying. Emotional tears release stress.
In an article by Judith Orloff, MD, in Psychology Today, she discusses the health benefits of tears. She describes a good cry as cleansing, a way to purge pent-up emotions, and to release stress symptoms such as fatigue and pain. Crying stimulates the production of endorphins, which are natural pain blockers.
Crying is good for your health, your mind, your body, and spirit. It is a natural cleansing stimulation. It is a natural cleanse, stimulating the release of pain. Give yourself permission, as well as the time and space, to work through your grief, to feel and to express your feelings as they come. So often we judge our healing by our tears. Find solace in knowing that tears are an expression of our unspoken words, our sadness, our pain leaving our bodies. There will come a day when tears are not a part of our daily expression. Until that day comes, let the tears fall and know that they are a powerful component of healing. Practice self-compassion, patience, and the active nurturing of your soul, and remember that every tear shed carries with it pain and stress.
Do you guys have anything else you want to say or add before I close up?
I just wanted to say I love you, ladies.
I know, this is so good.
Right? It feels so good sometimes just to be with you guys and hear with you, hear your words, and it feels so good sometimes to just get it
And
all
see your
out.
faces.
Yes, and see everybody's faces.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and listening to us today, and we will see you next time.